so standard intro. I'm Betty Adams, and I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Grimsabr.
Okay, nice to meet you, Grimsabr again. We're just going to talk some Kaiju number 8, maybe some general manga stuff if we have time.
That's right.
So I did kind of, unlike our previous chats, which were just kind of freestyle, I had a kind of a very specific question I wanted to address, and of course maybe go over the past few wait, how many chapters has it been since we
It has
last
been a
talked?
few. I think it's been like 2 or 3, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I think it was... Actually, I think it's been 5.
Has it been more?
Because I
Oh,
think we last talked at chapter 33 because we discussed General ISO. Yeah, because you and me and Dan, we discussed the director's Director
that's
General's
right.
name,
Yes.
and whether or not his wife was a member of the Defense Force.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
yes. So
that would be
it was
chapter
quite a long time
33.
ago then.
It's been a while with a couple of serious breaks. Oh, so I guess the big news is that the big news, kind of meta speaking, is that since we last talked, Kaiju number 8 has shifted from the 3-on, 1-off schedule to a simple bi-weekly schedule.
hmm
And even though everybody's swearing up and down that the Berserk creator did not die from overwork, I definitely get the feeling that there's going to be some schedule shuffling for all the big mangaka now.
I
It was
mean,
kind of a
if
slap
that
in the
happens, I'd be
face
all
of the
for it,
industry.
honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be a bit of a wake-up call because as much as we all love to have our weekly manga and we love to be able to experience that each week, it's got to be such a drain to be able to put out work constantly every week like that. I know
Yeah.
it's a full-time job, but still, like that, the length, the hours that they have to work each day is not like a normal job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good decision to start looking at reforming how manga is being developed in the industry and giving people more time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that Japanese is the only language that I know of that has a word for working yourself into death. So,
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
crazy.
yeah. And I think actually, from a reviewer perspective, the biweekly schedule actually works better for me. So,
Same.
win-win.
It would definitely give me more time to edit my videos.
Okay, so kind of the big question I have is, we're 38 chapters in now. The main character's
Yes.
been revealed. And we still don't know the big questions of what the little guy, the termite, the tapeworm, whatever you want to call him. What's
I
his
call that thing
motivation?
everything
What's
under
its
the sun.
motivation? Why was it looking for Kafka? What was it looking for? Was it looking for a compatible host? Was it looking for Kafka's
Right,
specifically?
yeah, yeah.
Now, as an artist, as an author, I have a theory that I wouldn't say I'm confident in it, but I'm definitely leaning more towards it than anything else. But just in general, what theory are you leaning towards? Where did it come from? And specifically, when it found Kafka and crawled into its mouth,
Mhm.
what was it? Like, what do you think it's not just its motivations, but what was its state of being? What was it thinking? Was it intelligent? Was it just a
Right,
machine
okay.
following programming? So kind of, what are your thoughts on the actual, because I've actually come to think of them as Kafka, Kaiju number 8, and the little guy, with the
Yeah, yeah.
Kaiju number 8 being what they are when they work together.
Right. Okay, so right now with what we've discovered from the latest chapter, I'm very much leaning towards, and this could obviously change the more information we get, and I might just change my mind as theories go on. But right now, I'm leaning towards the fact that the little kaiju bugs are some sort of developed. I don't want to say the word technology because it's obviously like a living creature, but oh, I think Dan's here.
Well, I just tried to message him.
Oh,
So,
okay.
in
It popped up for me too.
in case he shows up.
Okay. Yeah, so judging from what Kaiju number 9 said at the end of the last chapter, he was saying how he wants to get the kaiju power back into the hands of the kaiju. And that kind of makes my mind go along the lines that they're kind of, at the very least, they've developed some sort of creation that allows them to create kaiju. And the way my mind goes with it at the moment is that those kaiju are very specific. They're not just like your average general kaiju from Honju to Yoju. They're more like the class of the Daikaiju that we're seeing, the identified range. And I get the impression that the little kaiju bugs are part of that, and the reason why he wants to get it back into the hands of the so going on from that, looking at whether the little thing is intelligent, whether it had its own motivations, etc., etc. To me, it kind of seems now like it either. So at the moment, I'm thinking that it wasn't specifically looking for Kafka, but that could change depending on what we find out in the future. So now at the moment, my mind kind of thinks that it's some sort of something went wrong with it. It's defective in some way, or it was reprogrammed in some way, and it ended up finding Kafka, and that's how it ended up hosting itself to Kafka. And the reason why I say that as well is because we know that the one that's inside Kafka, so whichever one is controlling Kaiju number 8, kind of we know that it doesn't like other Kaiju, so it wants to destroy other Kaiju. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. That I feel like it's some sort of defective unit. Yeah, so I don't know if it has as much of its own intelligence. I feel like it's more of, it kind of seems more like a program that's running, and it has a specific goal to run towards. Yeah, I don't know what much more to say about it than that, but that's where my mind's with it at the moment.
Okay. So, while you were talking, I had a very specific question, but it escaped before you could finish.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Okay, so this one, it's kind of related, kind of a tangent. How did the little guy get into the hospital? At the time, I didn't question it. It was just a necessary plot point. But when you actually
just kind of
think
turns
about
up,
it,
doesn't it?
that was a first world, fully modernized hospital. And a massive percent of the design of modern hospitals is designed specifically to keep parasites out. Parasites, specifically that size, rats, because throughout human history, the greatest vector for diseases has been small rodents like that. So hospitals are specifically designed, the white walls, the shape of the hallways, the multiple doors to get in and out. Hospitals are specifically designed to keep parasites like that out, to make them easy to spot from the orderlies, by the orderlies and the ward nurses. And the window was closed in the room. And it was a very sturdy window. I don't think the little guy could have opened it himself, and Kafka probably would have noticed it if it had. So it's been just kind of bothering me. So how did the little guy get into the hospital? Any thoughts on that?
Was the window closed then? For some reason, I thought it was open.
There was at least 3 panels devoted to the fact that Kaiju number 8 had to open the window, and he took out the entire wall when he did it.
You're right. I'm looking at it now. It's closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are people out in the hallway who would have seen that.
Yeah, because the old dude walks in, doesn't he?
Yeah. So the hospital's clearly not shut down for the night. And the way hospital wards are designed, they're specifically designed to keep parasites of that sort out, because again, parasites are the biggest vector for diseases.
Good question. Yeah, how did it get in there?
And
you'd also think that they'd had some sort of detection technology for stuff like that, leaving the world they're in.
Yeah.
But then maybe the size of it would perhaps go undetected by such technologies.
I would lean towards that theory, that it was too small to be detected, except this is a hospital, and hospitals are designed specifically to detect that size of creature.
I mean, I was even thinking that maybe it like hoisted a ride on their way into the hospital on one of them, but then wouldn't it have been spotted when they were looking them over and stuff? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And that kind of cycles back to what I was saying about Reno. Maybe Reno is involved somehow. Maybe he's involved with a benevolent faction of Kaiju.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he deliberately smuggled the little guy in. But again, there's the whole thing. His reactions weren't
I think I would still freak out if that came true. I'd be like, but he was right.
Okay, but here's the question. Given your past experience with the 38 chapters of manga, would you be surprised if there was a sudden plot twist that caused you to freak out at this point?
Oh, no, not at this point. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be excited. Yeah,
so Dan just texted. he's coming in a bit.
Cool.
So now I have, again, you're coming at this from your perspective, and me
Yeah.
being an ecologist, I'm coming at it from more of a naturalistic perspective and looking at the little
Right.
guy as
Yeah.
an organism, possibly
Mhm.
a naturally occurring organism. And I keep cycling back to the life cycle of marsupials, specifically kangaroos,
Mhm.
because when you look at him, he has that mix of undeveloped features like a fetus, and yet he is clearly functioning in the outside world. And there is an animal that does that. You have the kangaroo. A kangaroo has litters of up to
Yo.
a dozen. Hey, Dan.
Hey, hi Dan.
So what we're doing right now is we're just
Oh.
kind of giving our thoughts on the origins of the little guy, the parasite that crawled into Kafka's mouth. And we'd like your take on it.
I'm so sorry. I was literally my headset, when I joined the call, my volume was all the way down, so I didn't hear your question. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
Hello.
I
Hi.
just asked Scrim to give his idea on what's the deal with the little guy. Where did he come from? What was his kind of state of being before he crawled into Kafka's mouth? And now I'm giving my thoughts. And then when I'm done, could you give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure.
So coming at it from an ecology perspective, I'm more and more seeing the little guy as an organism that has the life cycle of a marsupial. Because when kangaroo babies are born, you generally only see a mother kangaroo with one baby, but they're born in litters of like 5 to 12. And they're born very even more prematurely than a human baby is. They basically only have their forearms, and then their back end's kind of curled into that tail, a lot like the little guy was before he crawled into Kafka's mouth. No wings, of course, kangaroos. But then they have to crawl up the mother's stomach from where they were born into her pouch, and then they latch on, and the one that survives becomes the cute little baby Joey that you see in the pictures. And I was thinking if possibly Kaiju number 8 might have been a type of kaiju that was born with that strategy. They're born prematurely, then they have to find a compatible host, go in, and they grow to full size within the host. And if that's the case, whether this is a deliberately bioengineered or just a naturally occurring thing, I was thinking it would explain a lot of the kaiju number of the weird behavior we see. Like, for instance, the Hayden kaiju. I had a really fascinating discussion with Cold and Concerned on Reddit, and he pointed out that a lot of that behavior could be explained if the little guy started off as essentially a blank slate, that kind of infant form, and then learned from Kafka's reactions.
Oh, after becoming the host,
because
basically.
you don't see Kafka having that intense physical reaction to Daikaiju until after the first battle with number 9.
Right.
And so that you have, looking at what happens, looking at it from this perspective, the baby kaiju finds his host, climbs into Kafka, and then he's sort of piggybacking his intelligence and learning off of Kafka. So from the moment he climbs in, he gets this wash of negative emotions, body horror, terror, and the only positive emotion he has is that Reno's right there taking care of Kafka from the beginning. Reno was like, I think someone said he was ride or die from the beginning, as soon as he got over his initial shock. And so you have Reno being the caregiver.
Reno's my boy.
Yeah, and then the little guy, he's kind of piggybacking on those emotions. So Reno gets Kafka out of the hospital, and the first abatement of the negative emotions is when Reno talks Kafka down and gets Kafka to try to relax the old guy by flashing a smile. And one thing that we are pretty confident in human psychology is if you try and smile, it actually improves your mood. Then that doesn't work, obviously. They get out of the hospital and they're panicking and freaking out. And then Kafka realizes that there's another kaiju on the way and there's possibly people to protect. And the negative emotions just kind of stop because now he's got a job to do. And we all know that when you're freaking out, but then you're presented with a duty, the fear is subsumed to the duty for the moment, for most people. Then he goes and he rescues the girl. And the first truly massive, strong, positive emotion, that rush of dopamine and oxytocin that he gets, is going to be when that little girl smiles and thanks him which then links it back to the memory, his strongest positive memories, which are of Mina when they were children. And then you have, and then just going on with this, looking at this perspective of a blank slate toddler learning from its caregivers. The next big emotional moment is when Kafka shows up and finds Reno's is being basically tortured to death by Kaiju number 9. And that's the first time we see Kafka really experience super intense rage. And so at this point, here is possibly the reason that the little guy hates other kaiju, specifically Daikaiju. Has such a visceral negative reaction to them. Reno was his caregiver, the provider of food, the one who calmed them down.
Mummy Reno.
The one who accepted them without fear. And here's Reno being tortured to death by a Daikaiju with a clearly defined energetic signature. So the little guy can definitely sense, okay, here's a clearly defined energetic signature that he's never seen before. Here's Reno dying. Here's Kafka full of rage. So this is the appropriate response to the situation. And then you have Kafka rescues Reno and gets back. And one thing Colton Concerned pointed out was it really does look like you have a two-way flow of emotions here, because when Kafka gets done with getting diced up by the vice captain and gets back to Kikoru, he immediately gets up and tries to go check on Reno, even though logically he has to know that everything Kikoru says is accurate. And Kafka's the old head. He's the reasonable guy. That's his role in this little community. But he immediately wants to rush off and go expose himself to intense scrutiny from medical officers, to check on Reno when he knows he can't do anything for him. And that might have been the baby kaiju freaking out, because that does seem a very immature response, but it's exactly what you would expect from a toddler who is freaking out over his caregiver.
It's a cool theory, yeah.
And so
I could see a lot of that tying into my theory as well, especially in regards to how the small kaiju kind of comes to be, and how its hatred for kaiju has come about. So yeah, I like that.
And so my theory doesn't really address where it came from initially.
No.
But if you look at it as a blank slate sapient being whose intelligence is developing dependent on its host. And so it's like Kafka would be the mom, Reno would be the dad, and it's kind of emotionally imprinted on them and learning from them. It would explain Kaiju number 8's behavior.
Yeah, I can dig it.
Okay, so Dan, what are your thoughts? I was kind of hoping that you wouldn't come in till I was done, so I could get I got Grim's uncontaminated thoughts, but now your thoughts have been contaminated.
You have to leave then.
So.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right, goodbye.
Where do you think the little guy came from? What do you think its state of being was before it became Kafka's symbiote?
So I think one of the things that has just been something that's sticking in my mind is the whole like symbiote from Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So like the entire time I'm watching this happen, I'm thinking like they're taking a page out of Spider-Man's, notebook and making the Venom symbiote, but this time it's a kaiju. So I think that the kaiju reproduce asexually. I think that's probably a very likely thing, because we've already seen that they do have reproductive organs on them those
yoju are almost certainly fungal yoju are almost certainly reproducing asexually.
So so if they're reproducing asexually, you would think that maybe the little kaiju was formed from the big, that's why it resembled the kaiju that they fought, and it needed to latch onto a host to create a bigger, maybe kaiju were created from those little bugs, and those little bugs latch onto people and the person becomes the kaiju or whatever it is. They could have something sick and twisted like that.
Yeah.
Like every single, kaiju are just like an experiment that people did, and they'll probably somehow tie it into something like either mythical or something scientific or something completely alien. So those are the big three, right? They call them science, aliens, and magic. So I think that there's just a sincere possibility that you could have something that ties itself in like that, where Kafka's insect that goes inside of his mouth is like related to the fact that, you know, it's like a symbiote. So like it takes Kafka's emotions.
Yeah.
So everything that Kafka is feeling, it binds to him.
Yeah,
So,
I think we're
like-
all in agreement on that actually.
Yeah.
Okay. All
That
right.
makes
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of sense. Yeah, that really does.
It would just have to make the most sense that it would take the parts of his personality that are the most accentuated and adapt their own personality from it. That's why it's like kill Kaiju, because
Exactly.
Kafka, his one thing is to kill Kaiju. So he essentially creates. That's why they need to get that one back. That's why Kaiju number 9 is like, we need to get that back, because he obviously now knows that one, that baby, that spawn, could be something overwhelmingly strong, you know?
Big threat.
Yeah. So that's more or less how I feel about it.
Okay, so just in general, are you guys leaning more towards this was something Kaiju number 8, the little guy going out to form Kaiju number 8? Do you think that was something that was more like blank slate, or
Like a
I
random
would think baby
occurrence? Or...
kangaroo, or
I think,
deliberate
yeah.
secret agent?
I think they're at the right time. Like there's that's the one thing I don't know to assume whether or not like that symbiote cat like thing was planted inside before, you know, getting to that point.
Right.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I'm still kind of, I feel the same at the moment. I don't have enough information to really theorize on one way or the other.
It's a really, really, like, I'm trying to think of like the context clues that might help me
Right.
bring like me to that like conclusion, but it's
okay, context clues. That's a great segue, because I have a second big question. At the end of this chapter, I saw the last 2 panels with Kaiju number 9. I looked at them and I felt something twitch in my brain, twitch off kind of sideways, but it didn't have a clear articulated thought at that point. But about a half hour later, it clarified. The body that we saw in those last 2 panels was not the same body that we've seen before. And I realized that I was suddenly sure, with a level of confidence that really shocked me, that Kaiju number 9 is capable of producing multiple bodies, and in each appearance we've seen him in, it's been a different body. And I generally, when I get ideas and theories like this, they're not confident. It's just, it shows up in my brain as a potential. But I was so sure of this, and it really, really shocked me. So I went back to look for what I had seen previously. I went back for evidence. So I'm like, okay, this is either just my brain needs more. I need more sleep. I'm sleep deprived, or I saw evidence in previous chapters. So I went all the way back. I went back from chronologically from 38 to chapter 1, and so it took me until I got all the way back to the big fight on the training grounds.
Right.
And I went back to where we saw number 9 in that one, because I remembered he was a little skinnier than he was when he showed up when he fought Reno later on during their first real mission. Okay, so in the last scene, where do you remember how Kaiju number 9 leaves the training ground?
Not off the top of my head.
Like how he doesn't, yeah.
He did, the body completely dissipates.
He just kind of smokes out, doesn't he? Yeah.
No, he's standing there, he's looking dead at Kikoru, shoots her with the finger guns.
Yeah.
And then his body dissipates to dust. No core, nothing. It just poof. Yeah. Well, actually, the sound effect was FWIP.
Okay.
But so that body completely disintegrated. So the body that we saw, that we initially saw Kaiju number 9 as, no longer exists. It's just gone. Which means the body that we see, I'm assuming he has one core body. The one body that actually has
multiple times then.
Yes, the thing is, molting. Grim, your video really helped me on this, because you equated molting and shedding, but they're not. And then I realized they're not the same thing.
No, they're not. No.
Yeah, molting is when you go from when an undeveloped body goes from one stage to another. And
a shed is just like when a snake sheds its skin.
Yeah, and shedding is associated with growing, but not nearly as much. Graham, you described shedding really, really well. It's a process to shuck off the old skin, and it is associated with growing larger, but it does not facilitate the growing larger. It is the result of the growing larger. Molting facilitates growing larger because they molt, they expand, and then the new skin hardens, and that's their new size.
Right.
But
Yeah,
so,
I think the reason why I went down the shed route in the end, even though it says molted in the translation, was purely just because of the visual I was looking at with how
yeah,
there's that whole sort of just skin left there on the floor.
Yeah.
yeah. But that really helped me clarify my thoughts on this. So then they specify the exact place where the new body shows up, and that sent off an interest flag. So I looked it up. That's an actual place, and that subcity of Tokyo is right by Tachikawa, which is also a real place.
Mhm.
So that building is right by the main
Where there's-
training base where we've seen number 9 show up on multiple occasions.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I'm thinking that building is where Kaiju number 9 spawns his spare bodies.
Like his
So
base of
I
operations.
think he has the one spare. I think he has the one true body that has the core, and that's the
Ah.
one that we saw during the fight with Reno and Aharu, and then shows up
Okay.
again later when he
That's
switches
an
human
interesting theory, yeah.
appearances.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
And I think the one that we've seen at the end of chapter 38 was one of his spare growth bodies that he's been growing to. So I think he has like multiple bodies out in the world doing things at the same time. And I think when he says retrieve the kaiju power that's fallen into human hands, I think this body has been tasked with getting back the super weapons, not going after kaiju number 8. I think the core body's going after kaiju number 8 to kill him and use his body. And I think this body has been tasked with retrieving the super weapons made from the previous identified kaiju. What do you think about that?
That's cool. I like it. Obviously, I don't know. I don't know if I don't see it that way myself, but I do appreciate the idea there. I do appreciate that idea because that would be quite cool to see as well if we saw them trying to retrieve back those identified kaiju weapons.
Yeah.
Because they're clearly a threat. Like, look at the power that the number 2 set was displaying. That still blows my mind.
Okay, so I've just got a fun little short story I have to share with you guys. In my real life, my only anime friends are my little brother and my sister IRL.
Aww.
The rest of them are kind of scattered out, people I've met online over the years, or cousins who have moved to different states. So, but my mom she worked as a political cartoonist in her youth. So she's got a really good, she's kind of in a very similar industry, and she has a very good understanding of world building. And I was telling her about the steam venting and how I had to share it with her. It was such a good bit of world building. How the author introduced it with the nipple pee joke way back in chapter 1 or 2.
Still makes me
and
laugh.
then we had to wait 30 chapters
Yeah.
before the payoff. But it was, and all I did was describe the world building about the steam venting to her. That's all I explained. And from that, she stopped. We were going to the store. I finished explaining it, and she was interested. You know, she humors my interest, but she stopped before she went to the store. She turned around, she reopened the door, and she goes, "Wait a minute." And from what I told her about the steam venting, she immediately postulated the seizures that happen from the uniforms on the overheat. She goes, "Wait a minute, if these are kaiju muscle fibers, what happens when XYZ?" And then she turned to go to the store, and she turned back and said, "And what about," and she also postulated the presence of the Daikaiju affecting the human who is wielding the super weapons from the identified kaiju.
Okay.
So she basically just, without any information on them, described both the effects of the overheat on the suits and the effects of making the super weapons out of the Daikaiju.
That's what I mean. Like, that's what I mean about some of these stories for people that actually, like your mother, who actually do these, like this type of writing. For them, it's easy to see how the arc bends.
It connects, yeah.
And and they don't even need to know how the story, like what's the inner workings or even like the meat and bones, the theme or the plot of the story to even know how the structure is going to go. Right. She just understands how rising and falling actions work. So
your
she's
mom sounds cool as hell.
Yeah.
And I think another reason is just my mom was as a nurse, basically, not practicing, but she had all 4 years of training, and she understands how biology works. And just one thing I love about this is how close the author is sticking to reality. And I really want to know either what Matsumo, what the creators,
Matsumoto.
Yeah,
yeah,
Matsumoto.
Matsumoto, what their science background is, or who they've got doing the science.
Yeah, we've talked
giving
about this before,
science
but they just seem
advice
to
on
have
this.
so much knowledge on, like, they're really good at
Yeah, they
keeping
are.
things legit.
I mean-
They definitely have, like, just because like Shonen Jump, I know for a fact, like when they do Dr. Stone, like they actually get consulted by actual scientists.
For sure,
Just-
yeah.
But like I said, the problem is though, like a big problem that I feel in this field is always improper like inequality with pay, because those
Yeah.
people don't make enough money. Like those scientists that are acting as consultants, they don't make
course.
enough money.
They'll
So-
be getting paid pittance for that.
Exactly, which is kind of messed up when you think about it. Like,
It's
like how
sad,
they
yeah.
think about it. Yeah, it's that's why, like, I don't know if any of you guys are fans of Jujutsu Kaisen at all.
I am big.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jujutsu Kaisen is recently going on hiatus because the artist needs a mental health break.
Mhm.
Like that's something I don't want to see. That's why I like the fact that this is very inconsistent. This manga, you don't know whether or not it's going to do 3 weeks, then a showcase, or 3 weeks, then nothing at all, or then 3 weeks, or the 2 weeks, or it jumps all over the place. So like it makes me feel like they know that it's a success, so they can take their time with it, which I'm totally fine with, because you could see 3 chapters ago in Jujutsu Kaisen that the artist was worn out, because
Yes,
there was
I
a
totally
page.
agree with that.
Yeah, there was a page that was completely undone. Like you're gonna have to read the novel. You're gonna have to read the tankobon if you want to see how that scene was actually drawn,
Mhm.
because in every
unfinished.
iteration of it, yeah, it's gonna be unfinished on the apps, which is remarkably sad, because
Yeah.
that means they get pushed to ridiculous points.
And before you came in, Betty and I was talking about that as well, and we were saying how it's been confirmed for Kaiju number 8 that they're going on a bi-weekly schedule now, so we should be seeing a chapter every other week, a bit more. So I guess it'll be a bit more organized than it has been. But we were saying that that's good because it's still allowing time in between. It's still giving them more
Yes.
time than this like back-breaking weekly schedule that mangaka are so used to doing. So
That's
I was basically just saying I'm all for it. I wish they did that on all the titles.
Yeah, they one of my favorite manga right now, My Hero Academia Vigilantes, actually runs off of a bi-week schedule, and I can say that every single week the panels look like they're like completed. It looks like
it has
they
to be so much better for just everything across the board. The
Yeah.
art, the writing, like just their health.
Well, the whole thing is, if you guys, I'm assuming you guys probably haven't read, but you guys know of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
JoJo's for the longest time was a monthly Shonen Jump manga
Mhm.
until part 7. Part 7 is when JoJo's really goes off the rails, first of all, and second, like you're laughing because you
Which
think
one's
like
part
goes off the
7? Is
rail.
that,
Steel Ball Run.
Steel Ball Run, yeah.
Yeah, Steel Ball Run is it take everything you know about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and
Right.
throw it in the garbage.
Seriously.
Everything you know and just toss it in the garbage, because this is
That's
where the story
surprising because
actually begins.
JoJo's is already pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, well, it's
I just have the vaguest impression of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure just from random things I've seen on the internet. But yeah, Bizarre is.
Oh, I
It-
really like JoJo's. It's so crazy.
but all right. That point aside, okay, we're getting too far away from the initial topic. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so to get us back on track, the director general. Oh my goodness! I just want to say, I cannot express how satisfying
I called that, by the way.
this character development was
did.
to me. We went in there prepared to hate this guy,
I called
and
that
I just,
You did.
if this manga had been
And I
set
love him now.
20 years earlier, he would have been the main character.
Yeah.
I absolutely
And
love him.
one thing that has always irritated, not just about manga, every series, the pragmatic guy who's in charge of the system is almost always shown as an antagonist. And that character almost always gets the short shift, no character development. It's just there to be someone the audience within the system who's not a villain who the audience can hate. And that drives me so nuts, because these people who in real life, these people who keep things together, who are very conscientious, orderly, these are the bricks that hold civilization together. And the animosity and resentment that is expressed towards them in so much storytelling is unfair is not the right word. It's like
It's
counterproductive.
almost too easy to go down that road.
Yeah, it's counterproductive to the running of a healthy community. Because even if these are the people who have, okay, this is going to sound kind of weird, but these are the people who have to make the decision to put down Old Yeller. They make decisions that cause intense emotional suffering, but have to be done, and ultimately is the more loving thing to do. And so I just love how the creator has crafted this character who, looking back from chapter 38, is actually a guy who's full of compassion and just true love in the agape sense, where the love that C.S. Lewis talks about, that's very self-sacrificing and devoted and disinterested. But because of the position he is in, it is expressed through decisions that will cause intense emotional and physical suffering for everybody around him. And just through the way the creator has drawn his facial expressions and drawn his interactions, you can tell that this is a man who is not, even though he's been making these decisions for years now, it hasn't eaten away at his heart. He still feels for the people around him.
The one
you
thing
can tell that he wants to protect Kafka and he wants to take care of Kafka, but he knows that if he shows any sentiment towards Kafka, it will cripple his ability to actually do any practical good for him, because that will call his judgment into question with the council, who's already all against him and against Kafka. And I just love the character development.
I love the dude.
I think that his character is now one of the most crucial characters to the entire Defense Force, because he's now the like you said, you read Jujutsu Kaisen, he's the Gojo. He's the one that allows Yuji to live. It's like nobody's gonna cross Gojo, because if you cross Gojo, Gojo's gonna kill you, or if you even try to, or he's gonna imprison you or something, you're not gonna win a fight against him. This guy is doing a job that puts his life on the line. His face is literally covered. His body is probably covered in like 90% scarred. Like he's not really in a tip-top shape as he used to be, but he could still bang. We saw that. He had no problem.
Dude can still slap.
Yeah, dude can still throw the hands. So it's like he's still, in that sense, he's still, a threat. But like, there's gonna come a time where it's like, okay, if he dies, you put Kafka back in jeopardy, and you can have an arc where it's like we want Kafka exterminated and made into weapons, because there's going to be a nice hefty majority of people that are like, why do we have this guy just hanging out here? We can make him into a weapon and not have to worry about a kaiju taking over and killing everybody in the base. But the guy that's the highest up on the food chain was like, nah, he's chilling.
Yeah, I could totally see that kind of arc coming round like full circle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
it's
also
stereotypical shonen.
He hasn't had as much development yet, but the deputy director is shaping up to be pretty awesome too.
I like that guy.
I get the feeling that he's distinctly older than director Shinomiya. Yeah, they're very close. If you notice, he addresses when talking to Kokoru, he speaks of director Shinomiya by his first name without any honorifics.
Yeah,
and so they're clearly very close. I think, and I get the feeling that this might have been Aiso's mentor in the past.
Maybe.
But he is not as quintessentially the chivalric hero as Shinomiya, so he was passed over, maybe either refused or was passed over for the promotion to actual director general.
Maybe.
I was saying this. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Go for it, bro.
I was gonna say, like, the what I like about what they do with certain characters in shonen is either the dad is an absolute deadbeat, non-existent, whatever, like, or he's a shonen protagonist in his own right. Like, you see Isao and you're like, I want to see how this dude became the only dude to wear.
That's what I keep saying.
Like Kaiju number 2's gauntlets. Like he's the only dude that wears them. Like, okay, that's a pretty shonen protagonist type of deal where it's like, yeah, he's the only dude that could wear that. Like, that would be pretty awesome if, like, you get the scene where, like, he like is his mentor, and this guy that we just met is in danger, and he puts on the gauntlets for the first time and actually uses them.
Dude,
That's
that'd
like
be
a
so
scene in
sick.
its own right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I'm gonna I'll actually touch on this in one of my next videos on Kaiju number 8, but we've had so many little details about this past event surrounding Kaiju number 6, that I would love to see. And going off of what you said about, you know, these how they've built this past around these characters and how there's so much to go with, I would love to see just like a whole arc dedicated to the backstory, specifically behind what happened with Kaiju number 6 and the wife and that
I
battle.
wouldn't.
And
I would totally not. I would not be opposed to that at all,
no.
because there needs to like there always every manga tends to do a flashback arc or a prequel
Yeah.
arc or something, with the exception of My Hero, because My Hero does that in their spin-offs because they're huge.
Yeah.
And Jujutsu Kaisen kind of did too with Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 0. So
Mhm.
like
They even
I
had
wouldn't be
the
surprised.
hidden inventory arc with Gojo and Geto's
Exactly.
past.
Yeah, exactly. So there's what also like in manhwa, they do that a lot where like you'll have, I would say, a month and a half to 2 months of an arc just dedicated to a side character that's a part of the group.
It's just like backstory or history or something.
Yeah, it's very like what they try to do over there is they'll have a cast of characters that are all like great in their own right
Mhm.
and have their own arc that like you
Mhm.
can be like, you could take this character and make a story about them if you want.
Right.
Like, this
I think
person
it
is
would
the
be
main
so
character.
cool for Isao Shinomiya and,
Yeah.
you know, the characters that we've seen really important around him. I think seeing all of them in their prime back in the day going up against the odds, that would just be so dope. I would love that.
Because you gotta think, what, number 6, when he was a kid, that means if Kaiju have been around for like a while, that means like it was only until recently, within the past 30 years, 40 years, did these Kaiju get ridiculous.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
stupid strong.
So we know that the Kaiju from Vice Captain Hoshina's backstory, we know they've been around for centuries, probably forever.
Uh-huh.
But that
I think what was
for
Kaiju number
the
2, like the
majority of the
70s or something?
time, a well-trained swordsman could take one down.
Mm.
Kaiju number 2 appeared in 1972.
Yeah, that was it.
Kaiju number 6 appeared. They don't specify
I
it,
don't think
but
they said the date, no. But if his wife died then, and Kikoru is supposed to be what, under 18?
It was. I am assuming it's before the flashback when her dad.
Yeah.
It gives her that lecture about not
Wait a minute.
resting on her laurels. So Kaiju number 2 appeared in 72. Kaiju number 6 appeared probably about 7 years ago, because Kikoru looked about 12 there.
Okay. You guys watch
So
Demon Slayer?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
if there's like a Kibutsuji thing going on here? So
Maybe.
like,
I'm sorry, my
what
brain
if?
just completely went blank. I know I've seen Demon Slayer. Remind me which manga it is.
Okay. So the main bad guy of Demon Slayer becomes a demon
Yes.
to fight
Okay, I
an
got
illness.
it. Sorry. My
Right?
brain just reset.
Okay, so he becomes a demon to fight an illness that he had as a child, right? What if a
For anyone
swordsman?
listening, spoilers.
Well, yeah, sorry, my bad.
I'll put it in the tags when I post the
continue.
video.
Yeah, just have like a little beep. Just be like beep 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 beep. Okay, that aside, what if there is a swordsman in that era that fought a kaiju and a Kafka thing came out of its mouth? And that could have been the progenitor of all sentient kaiju, to the point where he started doing it and making people into kaiju, and then people are able to mate and create more kaiju. And then there's like the lesser kaiju that we all see, but then there's the upper kaiju, the echelon that we've talked about, that is capable of sentient thought and can turn and shapeshift from kaiju to non-kaiju, because at a
That's
certain
pretty
age or
cool
whatever
theory, man.
they ingest, a kaiju or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's like something that just kind of popped into my head by thinking about that. That would be absolutely batshit though.
Yeah, that'd be crazy, but that could be fleshed out in quite a cool way though.
Yeah. Kaiju number 8, man. Bugs.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so there's kind of a thread that was pretty important at the time and is definitely we're going to see again. The giant fungal kaiju, it's probably not one of these human-based kaiju that we've been seeing.
I don't think so.
It came out of a rift. It came out of a trench in the ocean, burrowed underground in Japan, grew to its massive size, and then started spawning all of those yoju.
Yeah.
I have a feeling like when we find out, because do we know that it even came through the ocean?
I don't think it specifies.
It stated that it emerged from a trench in the Pacific.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, you can probably assume because of its size.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it seemed, and even our current technology would totally have allowed us to track that. The big first world countries, they know everything that goes on in the ocean above a certain size because they're listening.
I'm sure they would be tracking it like they would earthquakes that happen in the ocean, like
seismic. Yeah.
But anyway, so then our first introduction to human form kaiju number 9. He states that he was the one who put the reproductive organs in those yoju. But we just see that the yoju come from a mass spawning from the giant fungal kaiju that had emerged from the trench. My question, which I'm sure will get answered later, is at what point in the giant fungal kaiju's life cycle did kaiju number 9 get into it, get a hold of it, and alter its offspring?
I think like right when he created it, because I think he created those kaiju. Like I said, like I have a feeling that these kaiju they can take lesser formed kaiju and mold them in their image by using their own kaiju form.
I could definitely see number 9 being able to do that. Whether they all can, I could definitely see 9 doing it.
I'm definitely certain of that with the kaiju that during the training arc, because they just straight up look like same skin, same rudimentary eyes, same teeth. So the Hanju and the Yoju that they fought during the training arc were definitely deliberately crafted by Kaiju number 9 from his own body. But given that the Defense Force did track this thing from the trench, where did it come from originally? So it emerges from the trench, comes up onto the land, burrows underground, hides underground where they can't fight it, and then erupts out onto the surface and begins spawning Yoju. So I guess if Kaiju number 9 originated it, he would have had to send it into the trench originally, or maybe Kaiju number 9 has an extra body down in the trench where he modifies the big kaiju, the giant size kaiju before they come out. That's just
there seems to be
some sort of contradiction in that setup that I'm sure will get explained later. I've got a lot of faith in these creators and their world building skills.
I mean, personally for me, the way I see it currently still is that there's a few variations of the kaiju and how they operate. So I still think the ones like the big mushroom looking one and then some of the smaller Yoju and Honju, I still think they kind of not necessarily operate outside of control, but more just like they can appear without being told to.
They're just a natural part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, so for the big mushroom one, I still kind of get the impression that it was just a natural occurrence.
Yeah, but the reproductive offspring in its spawn were stated to be a alteration by Kaiju number 9. He said, I think he literally said, I put these in here.
Yeah, he's like, they found them before, like they were.
Oh, you're right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he literally first person when he's doing his crazy rant, he says, I
the
did
organs.
this.
Yeah. He's literally picking through the organs.
So yeah, I mean, going off of what I said, then I think I would kind of get the impression that the big one was pre-existing then, and 9, like what Dan was saying, 9 kind of goes into that and adjusts it in whichever way.
Tweaked its reproductive organs so that it would produce Yoju with reproductive organs.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Yeah. So like, since we see like he's able to, the fact that these upper echelonic kaiju are able to do things to their body, it would just tell me that like maybe all they have to do is like start the growth process a little bit, and then like the earth takes care of it and like, you know, makes it as big as it wants to be. Because maybe they are rooted in sea creatures, and then like the kaiju like of norm are the ones that like reach, you know, the sea reach like, you know, the land, and then that's when people would fight them or whatever it be. And like, you know, some would occasionally get a little too inward, or some would dig underground and eventually emerge and stuff like that.
I just so I've just gone back to chapter 15, and I'm looking at the bit where Kaiju number 9 is looking at the corpse of one of the mushroom things, and he's talking about it. And this kind of makes me go back on what I just said now, because what he says is that he says, this sucks. I planned on outwitting them with a Yoju variant that could split off from itself. Should I revive them again? And then he says, no, I can only bring back so many. It really wears me out. But the first part that he said kind of makes me go back on what I said now. So and what he said in the last chapter as well about getting the kaiju back for the kaiju power back to the kaiju.
Exactly.
Now I'm really feeling like maybe they are heavily manufactured by them. They are heavily created, these organisms, which gives him the power to kind of do whatever he wants with them, adjust them in any way, change their makeup.
There's the trope of there being like the one person that goes crazy. And like whether it's StarCraft or Gears of War, whatever it might be, there's the one
somewhere,
person,
doesn't it?
Yeah, or even Mass Effect. There's always the crazy person that wants to control and never like dominate all humanity or whatever it is. He takes one of the kaiju and starts like 80 years ago.
Start something.
And
maybe it's like that swordsman you were talking about, Betty.
Yeah, like exactly. Maybe
I think Dan was talking about that.
I think.
Oh, is that?
Oh yeah. I was talking about like how the swordsman he's like watches his family die, and then he
That's it.
eats.
Sorry, it was you.
Yeah, and then he eats the kaiju or whatever, and he turns into a kaiju, and then he becomes a bad guy, and he starts reproducing.
There you go. That's Kaiju number 9.
And there you go. And then that's how Kaiju number 8, you know, gets its crazy lore, because you find out that one dude, you know, and then you find out like Kafka's like his descendant, and Kafka's always been half kaiju.
Well, I mean, right now I could definitely see it being how we just said then about how they're heavily created, heavily manufactured, heavily adjusted. Whether Kaiju number 9 is like top dog, I still don't know about that. I kind of feel like he's got people above him still.
Oh yeah. That's why he has to get the power back. He has to,
I feel like he's still got people heavily above him.
Yeah,
which is interesting because I'd love to find out what happens
there. The book from author Betty Adams, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, is a humorous look at human behavior through the eyes of aliens. This book is arranged in separate reports or essays, documenting the experiences with humanity through the lens of the aliens who have to interact with them. This anthology of short stories and vignettes from alien points of view highlights some of humanity's quirks we can all relate to. Author Betty Adams captures how strange and interesting humans can really be. This is a fun collection of stories you will really get a kick out of. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, from author Betty Adams. Order your copy right now on Amazon.